Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war powers to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of the war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military. A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connections and without a university education, moves to London in the 1580s, and becomes a remarkable playwright of all. How is an achievement of magnitude made? How does Shakespeare become Shakespeare? Domestication is an evolutionary, rather than a political development. They were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Humans provided the animals with food and protection, in exchange for which the animals provided the humans their milk and eggs and, yes, their flesh. Akimbo, this must be one of the odder-looking words in the language and puzzles us in part because it doesn't seem to have any relatives. What's more, it is now virtually a fossil word, until recently almost invariably found in arms akimbo, a posture in which a person stands with hands on hips and elbows sharply bent outward, one signaling impatience or hostility. The elephant is the largest living land during evolution. Its skeleton has greatly altered from the usual mammal, designed for two main reasons. One is to cope with the great weight of huge grinding cheek teeth and elongated tusk, making the skull particularly massive. The other is to support the enormous bulk of such a huge body. The situation is similar to a pregnant woman that has twin babies in her belly, says Avi Loeb of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He's proposing the idea in a paper that's been accepted for publication in the Astrophysical Journal. Few things in the world produce such amazement as one's first glimpse of the Grand Canyon. It took around more than 1 billion years to create this vast wonder in some places. Miles wide, largely through the relentless force of the Colorado River, which runs miles along its length and a mile beneath its towering. Global warming is defined as an increase in the average temperature of the Earth's. This trend began in the middle of the century and is one of the major environmental concerns of scientists and governmental officials worldwide. The changes in temperature result mostly from the effect of increased concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. The speaker is a marine biologist who became interested in the strandloopers, an ancient people who lived on the coastline, because of their connection to the sea. Their way of life intrigued him. As a child he had spent a lot of time by the sea, exploring and collecting things, so he began to study them, and discovered some interesting information about their way of life, how they hunted, what tools they used, and so on. There are perhaps 3 ways of looking at furniture. Some people see it as purely functional and useful, and don't bother themselves with aesthetics. Others see it as essential to civilized living and concern themselves with design and how the furniture will look in a room. In other words, function combined with aesthetics, and yet others see furniture as a form of. Modern buildings have to achieve certain performance requirements, at least to satisfy those of building codes, to provide a safe, healthy, and comfortable. However, these conditioned environments demand resources in energy and materials, which are both limited in supply, to build and operate. As a historian, if you really want to understand the sensibilities of those who lived in the past, you must be like a novelist and get into the skins of your characters and think and feel as they do. You are asked to imagine what it's like to be a peasant in medieval times, asking the sort of questions a peasant might ask. What the writer is saying is that a historian needs imaginative sympathy with ordinary people in the past. Humans need to use energy in order to sow. It is unsurprising that the way people have been producing energy is largely responsible for current environmental problems. Pollution comes in many forms, but those that are most concerning, because of their impact on health, result from the combustion of fuels in power stations and cars. The border itself between Mexico and United States is fraught with a mix of urban and desert terrain and spans over 1,900. Both the uninhabited areas of the border and urban areas are where the most drug trafficking and illegal crossings take place. Crime is prevalent in urban cities like El Paso, Texas, and San Diego, California. Researchers think that long-distance flyers such as the American golden plover and the white-rumped sandpiper picked up the spores while lining there. Then when the birds arrive in new places they molt, leaving behind the feathers and their precious cargo to start growing again at the other end of the world.